Hi, good afternoon, everyone. As you know, I had the opportunity to meet with Prime Minister Carney last week and discuss the circumstances facing our country, especially in advance of an important budget that we all know is going to be announced on November 4th. It was an opportunity for me to lay out our perspective as New Democrats on where we think our economy is and what we think is needed at this point in time. First and foremost, I expressed to the Prime Minister that as a strong New Democrat opposition, we are going to be supporting policies that we agree with, and we will be opposing policies that we don't, and therefore we will wait until that budget comes out and we'll evaluate the budget based on what is contained in it. At the same time, we communicated very clearly that we would not be able to support a budget that takes an austerity approach. In our opinion, at this moment in time when we are facing serious economic headwinds and challenges from south of the border, that an economically contractionist approach to our economy is not what's called for, but rather we need to be investing. We need to be investing in Canadian communities, Canadian businesses, Canadian workers, and Canadian infrastructure. I also took the opportunity to highlight a number of areas that we would like to see included in the budget, which is substantial investment in jobs, housing, and healthcare. And by jobs, we mean investing in those kind of jobs that are family sustaining, preferably unionized in every corner of the country. When it comes to housing, we want a serious investment from the federal government in affordable, non-market housing, because we know that's what anchors people in their communities and makes their ability to participate in our economy possible. And finally, in terms of healthcare, we don't believe that you can have a strong economy unless you have a healthy workforce and a healthy population. And, you know, even though it's not been talked about recently, we still have serious crises in our healthcare system. Millions of Canadians cannot access a family doctor. We have significant burnout, retention and recruitment problems in our healthcare workforce, and too many people can't get timely access to the care that they need. So broadly speaking, those were the projects and the principles that I outlined to the Prime Minister, and I'm happy to take your questions.
What's your reaction to the fact that Prime Minister Carney brought up the Keystone XL pipeline with Donald Trump in his meeting yesterday?
Well, I think that's diametrically opposed to what Mr. Carney said during the election, when he said that the days of closer economic and military integration with the United States are over. So first, that's deeper economic integration. Secondly, I fail to understand the economics of that, because part of the idea of providing east-west infrastructure is to reduce our reliance on oil and gas exports to the United States, because we receive a discounted price. So, and that's not to mention the environmental impact considerations of that. So I fail to understand Mr. Carney's reasoning in that regard, and I will say it's not what he said during the election.
Can you specify exactly what you mean by an austerity approach? What would have to happen for the NDP to oppose this budget?
Well, that's the word Mr. Carney used.
What does it mean to you, though?
Well, what it means to us traditionally is that the government will be cutting spending and cutting investments. And we think that's the exact opposite approach that's needed at this time. Look, we have a historic opportunity right now as a country to build more things in Canada, to develop our Canadian economy, to become more self-sufficient, to diversify our trade relations. And I think that that requires investment and belief in ourselves. And so that's why it's an investment budget that we are calling for, not an austerity budget, and we'll be looking for that in the budget accordingly.
So do you fight an election if need be?
Pardon me?
Are you prepared to fight an election over the budget if need be?
Well, you know, that's entirely up to Mr. Carney. I don't think Canadians want an election right now. But really, this is a minority parliament, and there's 3 opposition parties in the House of Commons, and it's up to Mr. Carney as Prime Minister in a minority government to construct a budget that can win the support of at least one of those parties.
Are you worried about divisions within your caucus, which look to be showing as the leadership race gets underway? And are you counseling members of your caucus to, for instance, avoid taking shots at one another in social media?
You know, we're a very democratic party. We have robust discussions. I think I would argue that among the most robust democratic discussions of any parties, we have a long tradition and culture in our party of that. So, no, I'm not worried about division. I think democratic discussion is healthy, and I think sometimes democracy can be expressed in robust ways. So I look forward to a really healthy discussion.
Do you agree with Ms. McPherson that the party needs to drop some shrinking into some sort of purity test to broaden its appeal to Canadians and get viable again?
You know, as the interim leader, I'm remaining neutral in this, and I'm leaving I'm leaving the leadership discussions to the leadership candidates for comment.
Mr. Davies. Pipeline and on the environmental concerns specifically, do you feel like Mark Carney is turning his back on Canada's emission targets?
Well, one thing I did express to the Prime Minister is that, you know, we face a $280 billion infrastructure deficit in this country, and there's no shortage of excellent projects across this country that there's widespread consensus on. And one of them is the east-west electricity grid that the NDP ran on. And I brought that up with him. And I spoke to him about how I thought that was consistent with what he wrote about in his book, Values, about the need to treat the climate crisis with urgency and to start transitioning our economy. And there's an example where we can have cheap, renewable energy in an east-west manner, which is, I think, an expression of sovereignty, because, in fact, I've referred to it as an east-west electricity railway. Just like the railway joined our country east to west, and we resisted north-south pole, we can create infrastructure that. So I think that's where we should be putting our money, and there's no controversy on that.
But to you, is any pipeline a bad pipeline?
We don't have any, position that's that kind of stark. You know, I think what we are looking for is infrastructure that creates jobs in Canada, that is sustainable, and that we can get widespread agreement on. And I think there's so many projects like that across the country that we should be rolling up our sleeves and building that infrastructure instead of, getting mired in infrastructure projects that are controversial, that require Indigenous consent, that raise environmental questions, because there's so many other projects to focus on.
Mr. Davies, allocation status for party leadership and how the NDP is dealing with any fundraising rules being broken.
I'm sorry, I didn't quite catch that.
Can you comment on Eva Engler's application status for party leadership and how the party is dealing with any fundraising rules being broken?
You know, the leadership contest is run entirely by the party, and so I'm leaving all questions about that to the party.
Mr. Davies, how would you describe the conversation that you had with Mark Carney, and what was his response to you?
I would describe it as positive and constructive. It was our first meeting, and it was substantive. So I think it's the first of many conversations that we're going to have because, as I've said before, in a minority parliament, leaders need to be talking to each other. If we're going to be confronting the serious issues facing our country, we're going to need, I think, good ideas from all sides of the House. And as I've said many times, no party has a monopoly on good ideas, and it's going to require cooperation. And I hope we've started to build that relationship.
Did you make any specific requests, and did he make any promises?
We didn't make any specific requests. We don't have a shopping list. We're not bargaining either in public or privately. What we are doing as New Democrats is laying out our vision of what's required for our country going forward, very transparently.
And do you have another meeting set up with him?
Not yet, not at the moment.
So how can Mr. Carney make a budget, though, that the NDP would support if you're not telling him the specific things that you want in there to be able to actually support it?
Well, it's his budget. They're the government.
You're going to have to vote for it, make a decision on whether or not there's going to be an election. The Conservatives aren't, the Bloc's not going to, it's coming down to you.
Well, we don't know what the Conservatives and Bloc are going to do. They've taken a similar position where they've laid out some of their concerns that would have to be met. I think in their case it's the deficit. So both the Conservatives and Bloc seem to want an austerity budget where they're more concerned about the deficit than they are about other things. New Democrats are concerned about investment. We don't want a cutting budget, we want an investing budget.
Yeah.
Yep.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Yeah, sorry, I don't know if that was it or not, but just happy.
Clarify specifically whether you gave Mr. Carney a red line on the budget, or it's just an austerity approach, broadly speaking, and you'll have to consider it once you see it.
Yeah, there are no red lines. We're not expressing that, and nor were we bargaining. It was our first opportunity to sit down and talk. But what I did want to do is give our broad perspective and where our general priorities are. And I think that that's helpful to the government, and they can take those ideas back and craft a budget. Yeah.
I also have a question from a colleague on why you're deciding to meet with the ambassador to Cuba, and if you're meeting with any other diplomats.
Oh, well, as an MP over the last 17 years, I've met with dozens and dozens of ambassadors, and that's what they're here for, right? They're here to represent their countries and to discuss, opportunities for closer economic, social, cultural, political relations. And I went to Cuba in January as well, along with some of my colleagues, one from the Bloc, Québécois, and some senators. And so I think it's a follow-up to that meeting.
So have you had a chance to speak to Premier David Eby recently, and you're worried that any of his kind of tough talk surrounding British Columbia's coastline could have an effect of chilling east to west infrastructure, obviously with British Columbia's coast being an important Canadian coast as well?
Well, I haven't had a chance to talk to Premier Eby about that issue. We do speak quite regularly, but I haven't had a chance to talk about that with him. But I can tell you that the NDP federally has long been a champion of a tanker ban up in the Douglas Strait. It's an incredibly sensitive area of our coast with tight hairpin turns, and the consequences, especially of a bitumen spill, would be catastrophic. And I note that it was a Liberal bill. David Anderson was the Liberal MP who championed the tanker ban. It was a Liberal government who basically established the tanker ban. And so I support Premier Eby in advocating strongly to protect our coast.
I guess I'm talking more about the rhetoric and posturing and what you might call a no more Mr. Nice Guy act that we're seeing from Mr. Eby.
Yeah, no, Premier Eby is a talented politician, and he's a compelling advocate for his province, and I think he's doing an excellent job. And I think the performance of the British Columbia economy relative to other provinces is a testament to his strong leadership.
Did you see the Immigration Committee propose changes to birthright citizenship? And would your party work with the Liberals at the report stage to try and strike those amendments?
Well, I would leave that question really to Jenny Kwan, who has been doing excellent work on citizenship issues. But if you're referring to the bill that just to come for them, I think Ms. Kwan has been quite supportive of modernization of our citizenship laws, because we think there are citizens that have been left stateless, particularly children of children who were born abroad. And so I think that we support reform in that area. Okay, thank you very much.
MC News, Canadian മലയാളികളുടെ വാർത്താജാലകം.